If you like the words food, football, and 40% off, then Instacart has the perfect big game deal for you. Right now on the Instacart app, you can get $10 off a $25 order of eligible game day essentials like chips, dips, sips, and chicken strips. So what are you waiting for? Free snacks with your order? Because yeah, Instacart has those too. Fees, taxes, and terms apply. Eligible items only while supplies last. Expires on February 9th.
Valentine's Day is coming up, and for me, there's only one place I trust, 1-800-Flowers.com. This year, 1-800-Flowers wants to make sure you're a Valentine's hero with an exclusive offer. Double the roses for free. When you buy 1 dozen, they'll double your bouquet to 2 dozen roses. It's the perfect way to say I love you without breaking the bank. Trust me, 1-800-Flowers always delivers. To claim your Double the Roses offer, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Super Real.
Hey, I'm Julian Morgans, and you're listening to What It Was Like, the show that asks people who have lived through big, dramatic events what it was like. When you're a kid, you think you know what's going on. You look at a person or a situation or an event, and you think you've got all of the information. But then you get a little older, and you look back, and you realize what you might have missed. That there was a whole lot of hidden context that you just didn't pick up on. For example, I used to know this girl in school, and she seemed to only own one single item of clothing, just this one dress, and she wore it every day. And it didn't matter what the weather was doing, if it was raining, if it was hailing, if it was snowing, whatever. She was always in the dress, and the dress was always dirty, and it was unwashed, and she kind of smelled bad. And in my young brain, I was like, what's up with this girl? But looking back, now I can see that there was probably some sort of darkness going on there. You know, some kind of sad story to which I was just completely oblivious at the time. I think all of us have a version of this experience, of looking back and wondering, what was really going on? Today's guest had that experience too, but in a much more dramatic way. Back in 1989, Melissa Fife was in high school in small-town Tasmania. And one day, out of the clear blue sky, her classmate shot dead both of his parents and his younger brother. And these parents, the whole family, they were popular in the community. This was a seemingly happy, stable family, which just added to the shock and to the mystery of the whole thing. Because there were no answers. Tasmania's justice system barred most of the case details from publication. And the community's reaction, the school's reaction, was to just march on as though this horrible thing had never happened. And so this triple murder was pretty successfully buried and forgotten about. But Melissa, I'm going to call her Mel, didn't forget. She got older and she started asking questions. Like, what drives someone to murder their whole family in cold blood? Why? Why did this happen? And today, Mel is here on the show to give us some answers. A few years back, she went on a journey to speak to former schoolmates, neighbors, and police officers to just get the backstory. And as you'll hear, she discovered something pretty dark about this kid's life. Something that might help to explain why. Mel is an award-winning journalist for the Good Weekend magazine. So as you're about to hear, she's a hell of a storyteller. Okay, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Melissa Fife. Mel, welcome to the show.
Hi, Julian.
Thanks for being here. This is fun.
My pleasure.
So, let's start with a bit of scene setting. You grew up in Tasmania in the 80s. What was that like?
Well,
It was actually, I was looking at Tassie really as an outsider because I'd grown up in Melbourne.
Okay.
And then when I was 13, my parents decided to have a tree change before it was really even fashionable to have a tree change. So I was plonked from suburban Melbourne into a small town in Tassie, and that's where I had my teenage years. And so I loved it.
Yeah?
I absolutely loved it. We were in a farming community. It's a small town. We weren't too far from the main city, one of the main cities in Tassie, and it was idyllic.
Yeah, nice. Okay. And can you tell me a bit about the culture? And I guess I'm asking that because maybe this is some Melbourne snobbery, but I've always thought of Tasmania up until maybe the creation of Mona as being a fairly rough place. I don't know. Was that your experience?
Not at all.
No?
No. I mean, it was different. Like, I remember going to Tassie and my mother would be in social situations where there was a debate about decriminalising homosexuality. So it was politically extremely conservative. And my mum would actually say to these lovely ladies that she was having morning tea with that she actually agreed with decriminalising homosexuality. So it had a very conservative bent to it. But it was also the home of the Greens and in Australia, so it was also in some ways radical. So it had two ends of that political extreme going on. But I wasn't. It was just a place where there was a strong sense of community. Everybody got together. Everybody looked after each other, which was not something I had experienced in suburban Melbourne.
That sounds really nice. I have to admit, I came to this story thinking it was just going to be a bit of a rough place to grow up, but no, it sounds wonderful.
It was wonderful. Yeah. I mean, one thing, and we'll get to this, is, there were a lot of guns.
Yeah.
And I had a sense of that, but not as much as I would come to realise later, looking back on it. This is pre-Port Arthur.
Yeah.
And it wasn't unusual for people to have guns in their house.
Sure. Okay. Okay. So we're going to be talking about this kid who was 15. You went to school with him, but we're not going to use his name.
We'll call him Troy.
Troy is a good name. Now, so what's your earliest memory of going to school with this guy, Troy?
So Troy went on the same school bus. So we took the school bus every morning and every afternoon. And I remember him on the school bus. I remember him... He was a quiet guy, and I remember him in my home class, like he was in my year 8 and I think my year 9 home class at high school. And I remember him, I just have this vivid memory of him being sort of standing by the window and the sun going through his, all the boys had mullet haircuts back then, and the sort of sun feathered through his hair. And I remember his desert boots, and I remember him being just very quiet, and I don't think we spoke very much, but he was part of the town. We lived on the same street. He lived 100 metres down from my driveway on the same street.
That's quite a cinematic memory. Did he have some sort of intrigue for you?
No, not really. I mean, part of looking back on what happened was like this questioning of like, was I just so self-involved as a teenager that I didn't reach out to him, that I didn't talk to him enough? Or did I, memory is a funny thing. Maybe I did. Maybe I had a conversation with him. I just can't remember. I feel like I should have had a conversation. Like, but I was a teenage girl, I was pretty involved in myself, and I think not unlike many teenagers across the world, probably.
Oh, it's a universal experience.
Yeah.
Just like peak self-involvement.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like he was pretty reserved. Do you have any memory of him being, I don't know, was he bullied? Was he popular? Was he, I don't know, just like what was his kind of social standing in that high school hierarchy?
I think he was sort of on the outer a little bit. I think he wasn't part of the popular crew, and I wasn't either, to be frank.
But I certainly in the town he was not, like he didn't play footy, the people who were really kind of cool in this town were the people who played footy.
Of course.
And I loved the football. I followed the football team everywhere they went. I was obsessed with them. And I don't think he was in the football team or had much to do with the footy team at all.
Okay, right. Yeah, I had the same thing. I was never part of the footy team, which affected my social standing a lot.
Did you do cricket or any other sport?
I've never been a sporty guy. Look,
Okay.
I've got a podcast.
Oh,
Clearly,
yeah, exactly.
read my podcast. No. Well, I guess the next step was the event. Like, how did this go down?
So we had a curriculum day, and it was in 1989, towards the end of the year. And I don't remember, what I was doing on that day. I think I might have been at home, so not far from what happened. But basically on the day, Troy, he got up and he at some point in the morning, he shot his father first, then his mother. I think that's how it went, and then his little brother. That was his whole family at the time, and we heard about this, I think, sort of towards the end of the day.
The day that it happened.
Yeah, and he had told quite a few people, students, like my fellow students, that he was going to do this the day before and possibly even 2 days before. So on this curriculum day that we were having, he wanted to go to the pool, and he said to people, if my parents don't let me go to the pool, I'll kill them. And people sort of, I don't think, there's a lot of guilt around this after the event. Like, I think some people feel, should they have taken this seriously? But I think they just thought, of course, he'd never do that,
Yeah, it's a crazy thing to do. Crazy thing to say.
Crazy thing to say. But nonetheless, he did do that. And then he got in a car and he drove to, well, I don't know where he was driving to, maybe to the pool, but he had a car crash on the way into the town, the regional town that we lived near. He had a car crash on the roundabout, and that's where the police found him.
This was after he'd killed his family? After
he killed, yeah. He wasn't hurt, but that's where they found him, the police. And I guess, that was all that we really knew. Like at the time, it was the late 80s, and I think about this a lot. And one of the reasons that I went on to write about it was because there was absolutely it was like all the adults in our life, including our parents, including the people in the small town that I lived in, including the teachers, the principal, everyone at our high school. It was like this just didn't happen.
Wow.
It was like there was if it happened today, we would all be counselled, we would be offered counselling.
There's a real process.
Yeah, a process. And there would be an assembly even maybe, or somebody would say, look, we acknowledge that this is upsetting and that some of you would be really upset by this. There was nothing like that. Nothing like that.
Wow.
And so all we knew really was that he had shot his family, his whole family, including his little brother was 9 at the time.
Oh, my God.
And my brother had taught him, the little brother. My mother had. She was a teacher. Okay. All that we knew was that he had done this because he couldn't go to the pool. And because of the way that the sentencing laws were in Tasmania at the time, there was no trial because he pleaded guilty.
Okay.
And he didn't even have to get up at the time to say why he did it or what he was feeling or anything like that. So it was not like there was any media reporting. There was a suppression order. There wasn't any idea that we had of why he did this. So it was just a big kind of question.
Big question mark.
Yeah.
So do you remember the moment that you were given this news? How did it go down for you?
I think my parents told me. I mean, I don't have a very good memory of that. I think my mum or my dad have told me, and we lived on the same street. So we had a long driveway, and our house was sort of behind this street, but at the end of the driveway, Troy's house was like only 100 metres away. So it was close to us, the proximity, we were close to it. And I think my mum, I don't know how they found out, but it was a small town, and just, we knew the neighbours really well. The Troy's neighbour was the butcher in the town, and we knew him really well. And so it just spread like wildfire. And I don't remember what my reaction was, other than it would have been shock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said before that this guy, Troy, had told some of his mates that, hey, I'm going to shoot my parents if they don't let me go to the pool. Did you speak to some of these kids who told you this?
No, I didn't know that until after in the middle of doing a story, like trying to find Troy and trying to work out what had happened.
Okay.
I then went on to my high school Facebook group, and I said, hey, I'm doing this story. Does anybody remember anything? And that's when I got a lot of people, privately and on the group message saying what they remembered of the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's set this up. So you said before that there was a big question mark left hanging over this for many years. So what was the catalyst, or like what was the turning point that made you think, hey, I really want to sort of get some answers here?
I think it was just this kind of, look, I'm a storyteller. You're a storyteller. I'm a journalist. I kept thinking it's a combination of constantly wondering about him, constantly wondering, is like, what's happened to him? Like whenever I was in Tasmania and driving past the detention centre where he would have been as a 15-year-old, I used to think about, well, is he still there, or did they transfer him to the adult prison, which is, not a great place. And it turns out he was transferred. But I used to think about him. I used to still wonder, is it true that like he killed his parents because he couldn't go to the pool? Like, is that right? And why couldn't we talk about it? And so there were all these questions in my mind that I had just niggling, not obviously didn't affect me day to day, but just when you think about your whole life, you have this thing that's happened, and there were just questions. And then also journalistically, I just thought there would be a story in trying to find out why, and trying to work out what happened to him.
Yeah, because that feels to me like that's the biggest question is like, was this kid a victim of, I don't know, domestic violence or something? Or was he just a bad kid? Like that, like what caused this to happen? Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that I wanted to, exactly. That's exactly, I never thought he was a bad kid. Like in the sense, like I knew something must have happened to him. I knew very rarely do people just kill their parents and their whole family out of nothing,
No, absolutely.
And so I knew that there would be something, and it would just be a matter of trying to find, what that was.
Okay, well, let's sort of dive into your investigation here. Before we do that, though, can we just put a little bit more detail on the crime itself?
Yeah.
And I want to do that because if we've got this question about, like, was he good or bad, or like what was his circumstance, I think it helps if people know the kind of the gravity of the thing that he did. Like it was horrific.
Yeah, he shot his father when he was lying in the waterbed, and I think he shot his mother in the same room or just outside of that, and his little brother sort of against the back door. And his brother, I think his little brother died instantly, but his father was still alive when the neighbour, the butcher
So it's the butcher who found them?
Yeah. With another neighbour, I think they came in, and And the father was still alive, I think, at that point, but then shortly after died. And yeah, it was a pretty gruesome scene. I went to find the butcher, who had, this is so long afterwards. And he had moved away from the town and he was living on the East Coast, and he's a lovely guy. And I did feel, I did tell him what I wanted to talk about, but it was sort of, he was obviously, I don't think he'll ever forget the scenes that he saw that day. Like he was very, it was extremely traumatic for him to.
What did he tell you about the way it went down for him?
He just talked about how he'd gone into the back door and he couldn't get in through the door initially because Troy's little brother was sort of slumped against the door, and he just talked about hearing the father, sort of either groaning or just obviously dying,
In the ruins of a waterbed.
Oh, the waterbed. Yeah, the
Wow.
waterbed made quite a mess.
So what was your process here? Because I know that you've set yourself a pretty big task, really, to unpack some mysteries from decades earlier.
Yeah.
So how did you approach it?
So I think the first thing that I had to do was I got every document that I could, that was on the public record, and there were quite a few. So because he the laws changed and he was sentenced to life, and then the laws changed and he was actually released from jail. There were records of his parole hearings, and there were at least the judge's statements. So when the judge said, yes, I will let you go, there were things like, judges saying he now does feel remorse, which initially he didn't. I spoke to the initial policeman who interviewed him, and that's another thing I did. I tried to find these people who had some contact with him, and initially he showed no remorse. Like the policeman that I interviewed, who was now retired, he was just nothing going with anything about I feel bad about this. He just did not express that at all.
Like single word responses.
No. I'm not sure I don't know about that, but he certainly had no remorse at that point.
Okay.
And then he did later. And the documents show that he did, the documents showed what he did in prison, that what programs he participated in. I tried to get, the members, the family, but they were impossible. They didn't want to talk about it.
Like Troy's family?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, his
Extended.
aunties,
Yeah.
uncles, grandparents, that kind of thing. I could not. They just wanted to let sleeping dogs lie. They did not, which is absolutely fair enough. They just wanted not to talk.
Yeah.
And then, so there was that element. I visited their graves. I went to find the butcher.
So this butcher who was the next door neighbor,
Yeah.
had he overheard gunshots? Is that what drew him over?
I think so. No, actually, sorry. I think what happened was his wife at the time, their child normally went to Troy's parents for childcare in the morning. But on this one morning, their child was sick and didn't go over to this
So lucky.
murder scene. So that was so lucky, and the butcher was like, this is just unbelievably lucky.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. Hey, we're just going to stop here for a quick ad break, but stick around. We'll be right back with more What It Was Like.
The new Boost Mobile network is offering unlimited talk, talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for life.
That sounds like a threat.
Then how do you think we should say it?
Unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for the rest of your life?
I don't know.
Until your ultimate demise.
What if we just say forever?
Okay.
$25 a month, forever.
Get unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month with Boost Mobile forever.
After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.
Hi there, it's your vagina speaking. I know sometimes I have a hard time getting there when we get down, but OMG Cream from Wisp is here to help. The instant arousal makes it easier to, shh. It takes 2 minutes to order online, so let's give it a try. OMG. I literally just went to heaven. I'm gonna try that again. Go tell your friends though, get on Wisp. Order OMG Cream online at hellowisp.com. That's hello, WISP.com, and have it delivered for free. Use code OMG for 15% off your first order.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Weight loss. It needs to be fast and sustainable. Noom GLP-1 starts at just $149 and ships to your door in 7 days. Take it from Lauren, who lost 22 pounds on Noom.
If I come off of the GLP-1, it's not going to automatically make my weight yo-yo back.
$149 GLP-1s? Now that's Noom smart. Get started at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. Individual results may vary. Not all customers will medically qualify for prescription medications. Compounded medications are not reviewed by the FDA for safety, efficacy, or quality.
So at this point, after you'd spoken to a few people and read some court documents, did you feel like you're any closer to having some questions answered?
Well, yeah. I mean, I did start to sort of get a picture of him. He started just not to be this two-dimensional desert boot wearing, mullet-haired guy. He was starting to come a little bit into focus, a little bit. And of course, I had no idea where he was. Like, was he in jail still? Or like he committed this crime at 15, so this is sort of, probably at least 25 years later. And so I wrote to the jail and I said, can I please, with the ridiculous idea that he would talk to me. I mean, I just want to put this on the record. I totally understand how ridiculous that is, as if he would want to even talk to me. It's completely crazy.
It's not ridiculous. Some people want to have their story heard.
That's true.
I've encountered prisoners or people who have done horrible things and they're like, sure, I've wanted to share this for a long time.
Exactly.
It's not impossible.
That's what I thought. You just have to ask. I think one of the rules of journalism is you got to ask.
You got to ask.
Yeah. So I did ask and I sent this letter to the prison. And then, a week later or something, it came back, my letter stuffed in the envelope, and then, and then a little note from the Corrections Tasmania saying we have no such prisoner. So it's like, oh, okay, he's out of jail.
Oh, okay.
And so then I tried to find him, through various means, and I got onto a police source who knew what circles he'd been in. And, of course, this is, again, the great tragedy of what had happened was that he had spent most of his adult life institutionalised. He came out of jail and then went back in because he was charged with dealing meth.
Ah, he developed a meth habit.
Yep. And he fell in with a group of a group of criminals, as you do when you're in jail, because you don't know anybody else because they're the people So he was involved with a group of powerlifters in Hobart.
And this is what, the early 2000s? What?
Well, when he came out, this was probably more I'd say I don't know the dates exactly, but more like 2010.
Okay, sure.
Sort of 2014, more like that kind of time. He was, again, as I said, he was in and out of jail.
Okay, so he was paroled and got out kind of early?
He was paroled and then picked up with meth.
Okay.
And I think twice maybe. And so this source of mine said, look, he's these are his mates. They're at this gym, in Hobart. And then I finally found Troy's Facebook site, his account, and I reached out to him on that, and immediately he blocked me. And I was like, okay, that's my answer. He doesn't want to talk. And of course, why would he? And then meanwhile, I was having this whole ethical dilemma about the story itself. Why do this story? Why not let sleeping dogs lie? Am I upsetting the family? Am I upsetting my fellow students? Because the Facebook group, it was not all roses, I have to say. Like there were people who said, oh yeah, we really support you, Mel. Go for it. Try to find, I've always wondered, I've always had the same questions. There were people who were like, helped me. And there were some people who were like, do not do this.
In a sort of like insulting, very critical way?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Like, you're just a journalist looking for a cheap story. How dare you do this? And, that really, really kind of angry. Yeah.
I run into that person all the time. It's like, it's the same person just over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. I sort of, this one particular person, they said, look, this has affected my whole life.
Yeah.
This person was quite close to Troy. And I just hope that he rots in jail. He showed no remorse. I never want to hear his name again. I can't believe you're doing this story. And he was really angry, continued to be angry, even after I wrote the story. So, yeah.
So why did you decide to pursue the story?
Because I think that through story we do get some sort of understanding of what's happened. We can make sense of the past and how humans behave. There was two things going on, as I said before. There was like questions that I had. I'm also a storyteller. And I thought there is value in that story for other people and for me. But it goes, it definitely is one of those stories where you have to kind of constantly question yourself ethically. Everything that we do is something that needs to be looked at through a prism of ethics. I don't know if you ever listened to that podcast called Ghost Stories?
Yeah,
Ghost
once
Story?
or twice. I know it.
Yeah. So it's about a guy who decides to go and investigate what he thinks was a ghost in his childhood bedroom because he meets another guy who had the same bedroom, same house.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
There's a ghost. He thought there was also a ghost.
Yeah.
But through some twists and turns, he ends up investigating his wife's family. And his wife's family becomes incredibly angry at him, because he's investigating something that overturns what they thought was family law, what they thought was the truth about their family. And when I listened to that podcast, I was like, that's exactly what I went through with this story. When do you leave sleeping dogs lie? Is the act of telling this story more damaging? Do you know what I mean? What's the kind of outlook? But I think that telling the story is really important. I still think that, but as long as you do it carefully.
I completely agree. I absolutely agree. I mean, of course I agree. We're both sort of in media, we're both journalists, storytellers. But my personal hot take on it is that bad behaviors, bad people are kind of like mushrooms and they sort of grow in the dark. And I feel like the only way to really mitigate all sorts of problems, like bad, sort of dirty secrets, like let's say if it's the abuse of children in the church, or let's say it's like domestic violence in homes and the doors are closed, whatever.
Yeah.
That stuff all thrives in silence. And when you shine a light on it, it's suddenly like, it sort of retreats into the shadows and everyone's like, oh, let it go, it's privacy. Just let sleeping dogs lie. Like that phrase to me wallpapers over all manner of evils.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think like the pain that might be incurred in getting people to reflect and talk and think, sure, there's a bit of pain there, but the overall benefit outweighs the costs.
Yeah.
I think.
I agree. I think that's true. I think it's also, it's easy to think that I think humans are so complex, and I didn't want to think of Troy as this sort of horrible person. I wanted to understand why he had done what he had done. And in coming to that, I look back on this piece and I think it was a really good piece of writing, and I got I got there on the writing, but I consider it a failure of journalism.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Why do you consider what you did, this journey that you went on, why was it a failure?
Because ultimately, like I'm very hard on myself, on the journalist. So, what I do has two components. It's got the journalism, the finding out stuff, and it's got the writing. Like you have to be able to write this long 5,000 word piece, otherwise it's no point, So the journalism side I'm really hard on myself about, and I didn't get the story, I don't think. I didn't get him, and I didn't get ultimately why he did it. I did later get that.
Hey, we're just going to stop here for a quick ad break, but stick around. We'll be right back with more What It Was Like.
Everyone knows that it's not Valentine's without 1-800-Flowers.com. So whatever you do, don't forget the flowers. Right now, when you order early from 1-800-Flowers, you can get a gorgeous bouquet of assorted roses starting at $24.99. It's the perfect way to say I love you without breaking the bank. Don't put this off. Quantities are limited, so lock in your roses starting at $24.99 today at 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST.
Weight loss. It needs to be fast and sustainable. Noom GLP-1 starts at just $149 and ships to your door in 7 days. Take it from Lauren, who lost 22 pounds on Noom.
If I come off of the GLP-1, it's not going to automatically make my weight yo-yo back.
$149 GLP-1s? Now that's Noom smart. Get started at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. Individual results may vary. Not all customers will medically qualify for prescription medications. Compounded medications are not reviewed by the FDA for safety, efficacy, or quality.
Okay, well, let's hear why he did it.
One person on Facebook, one person in my class, one person in my year level, who just missed, he just missed my post about it. But for some reason, he when I had written it, and I think he got wind of it. I think because I put a Facebook post up about it, and I said this is with the cover, I think maybe, and he was like, "Oh my God!" He messaged me and he said, "Look, I really want to read this story. Can you get me a copy?" And then basically he proceeded to tell me that he was close to Troy, and he knew that Troy often went to a farm or a property, I think you'd probably describe it, not a farm, a property not far from where, like out the back of where we were, like in the bush, where he would often be sent there on holidays. And this guy who was talking to me about it said, I was taken there once as a 12-year-old, and I remember it very clearly. There was a shed, and there was this obese man in this shed, and there were 3 kids there as well. One of them was Troy. He said, I got a completely bad vibe, and it was like a place you went to get wood, like if you wanted to get some wood cut or whatever. And Troy's parents, this guy said Troy's parents sent him there, and this obese guy was a pedophile.
Okay.
Yeah, and apparently there were other victims as well.
And like this fat guy in the woodshed would like lock the shed door and these kids. Like,
I don't know any other details. That's all I know.
Okay.
And that was after we printed it,
Okay.
which was devastating, because if I had known that, I would have then tried to find all the victims. I would have tried to interview them all, and I would have tried to expose that fat guy in the tin shed. Like, that would have been what I would have done, as part of the story. But I just had no idea. There was this one guy who, and look, maybe the other guy who was really angry at me, maybe he too was a victim. I don't know. But I don't know. I don't really know anything other than that.
Okay. I have so many questions here. So just so we can sort of close the loop on this thing, did this guy that you spoke to, did he run off or something? He can tell you this story because he didn't stick around. He got bad vibes and ran.
He was there with his dad.
Okay.
So his dad took him, they were there to get wood. And he just saw this scene and he was just like, there was the guy in the tin shed owned the land, right?
Right.
Yeah. But it might have been a place where Troy had gone shooting or, but he was sent by there was definitely an element that he blamed his parents for sending him there on holidays.
On holidays?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there any, like, this was like a camp for kids? Or
No. I think it was just maybe a place where, I don't know. So many unanswered questions.
Yeah. There's a lot of, on the one hand, it feels like an answer. It feels like, okay, let's just hypothetically say that Troy was getting abused by this fat guy in a shed. Maybe that's an answer, maybe. But then it's also all these other questions about, like, were Troy's parents like in on this? Did they know what was happening?
I don't think they were. I just think they weren't maybe listening to him.
Okay.
But this is, again, it's more speculation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're dead and, Troy's not talking and And so it was sort of like, that was all I was sort of left with, but that was post-publication. So that's why I say that, I consider it a journalistic failure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as it stands today, if you had to take your best guess at what was happening for Troy, what do you think the answer is?
I don't know. I don't know. The last that I could see was that he was out of prison. He'd made these friends. And he'd struggled with a gambling addiction. I just hope that, I don't know, I have no idea what his life is like now. I just hope that he's found some sort of peace. Yeah. And I have no idea what it would be like. But obviously it's a life completely marred by something that he did as a 15-year-old, like destroyed.
But I guess what I'm getting at is, like, do you feel like you answered your own question? Was he a bad kid, or was he some sort of survivor of some sort of horror that we don't know about?
Well, I think I can only speculate with the extra and belated information that I got, and I don't have any reason to doubt this person who told me it. I think he was, his life was marred before that in being a victim of child abuse. That's what I gather has happened. And I think it's such a traumatic thing to have had to happen to a child. I just think these labels of good and bad are just way too simplistic.
Yeah, I agree. When the article came out, how did your parents or people that went to school with this guy, your friends and family, how did people respond?
Again, there was this sort of, there's a spectrum of responses. So there was like people who were, well, first of all, we had restrictions on the restrictions on the article in Tasmania, which was so frustrating because I wanted I wanted the people that I went to high school with to read it, and I don't know if many did. They did if they had moved to the mainland, but it was very tricky to get them for them to have access to it. But the ones that did read it, they were some were like really glad that I did it, and then others were still angry at me, probably still are angry. I sort of got a kind of, my mum said, "Oh yeah, that was well done," but she was, I don't think my dad said anything.
Dad.
So yeah, I don't know, but I was really just interested in what my classmates were thinking about it. They had obviously thought a lot about it. They were confused as I was, and they were like, there were all these wild theories about it, but basically, several of them, had said, yes, he said that he was going to do that, the day before or the 2 days before.
Several.
Yeah,
like he was trying to widely disseminate this thing as much as possible.
I think we had some running carnival, and he'd announced it to several people at the running carnival, and I think for those people, as I said, it's like, God, what do you do with that?
Yeah. Those years are so surreal in my memory.
So weird.
So weird.
Do you remember specifics of your high school years?
Yeah. Like some of them in sort of hyper reality, I can really picture the details. And then others, there were sort of weird blurs. But yes, your almost adult perception of how the world works, but you've also got a foot in childhood still. So you just have this sort of miscomprehension of how adults, like this sort of contextual stuff. You see an adult doing a weird thing and you're like, oh, I don't know, whatever. But then years later, you're like, oh, that's because of that. Or you just sort of know a bit more about how adults function.
Exactly.
And it's, reflections on adolescent stuff is really weird.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I sometimes, I don't know. It's so hard because I moved away for uni, and so I feel like I left a lot of those people and didn't talk to them for a long time, and then I sort of popped back into their, Facebook group. It was like, hi, I want to talk to you about this triple murder. So again, the strange life of an inquiring journalistic mind.
Yeah.
But and some of them, I really think they took it in good grace.
Yes.
They really did, and they understood what I was trying to do, and that it wasn't too creepy and weird.
So what did you learn from, I guess this is a two-pronged question. Like when this happened, reflecting on this as an event, what did you learn from that as like an adolescent event that happened to you? But then also later in life, when you've done this journey and unpacked some questions, some answers, what did you learn from that?
I'm trying to think really, I'm trying to work out, I still don't know how it affected me as a person, that this happened in my high school years. Like, I don't know. I've reflected a lot on the gun thing, and also how ridiculously emotionally stunted the whole milieu was of my high school and the town that I lived in, and how could the adults not kind of help us understand this thing. I think it's amazing that we're better than that now.
If it happened today, you think it would be a different? It would be.
Oh my God! Thing. It would be like 100% better. The response would be much more pastoral, much more caring, much more psychologically based in trying to help people. But that was just completely missing. So I've reflected on that. And with the story itself, I've as I've said, I thought it was a journalistic failure and frustrating, but I'm still glad that I did it. And at the time when I was being particularly sort of attacked by this one person who was so angry at me, I did have moments of real confusion. Like, why am I doing this? I don't know. Am I doing the wrong thing? So, but I after that have come to the view that no, it was the right thing to do, and it was a good thing to do, even though I didn't quite get the answers at the time that I wanted. I eventually did. And, since getting the answers, as I said to you before, like I haven't read that piece since I had to reread it for this interview. And I think the reason is because all my questions, I don't have any questions anymore. I don't have any like niggling, like what happened there. And I feel a bit more bonded to my classmates, the ones that helped me, like, and supported me, and we kind of reached out to each other and went, that was kind of crazy, wasn't it? Yeah. And we hadn't really talked about it before,
Yeah. It was probably far more of a bonding experience than any sort of high school reunion could ever achieve.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You guys probably needed to do that because individually you were probably all doing it for years and years.
Well, everybody had their own story, and that was fascinating. It was like that torch thing. It's like, everyone had their one thing. Oh yeah, I saw him driving down the street and I thought, geez, Troy doesn't have a license. Why is he driving his car? Or, I saw him that time when he burnt such and such in the fire and I thought that was weird. And, like that everybody had their own kind of version of it. And
He burned someone in a fire?
No, I think he tried to put a lamb in a fire or something. I don't know. He did something that was a bit odd that one of my friends said. That was the moment where I thought, okay, he's not quite right. I love stitching together all that stuff as a journalist. Like, oh, you had that sight line into him, and then you had that sight line into him, and I find that really fascinating.
Yeah. I once saw a kid. I had this friend, and I pointed out this beautiful butterfly. It was like the most stunning butterfly in my memory. It's like all the colors, kaleidoscope. And then my friend, he's like, walked over to it and stomped on it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and like rubbed his foot around like he was putting out a cigarette butt on this beautiful butterfly. And he said, those ones are poisonous. You got to kill them.
Bloody hell.
And at the time I was like, whoa, that is so messed up. And now years later, I'm like, was that something? What was happening for that guy?
Has he become a serial killer?
Probably. God knows. His parents picked him up and moved him away, and who knows what he's up to. But that was my lamb moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, all right. This is probably my last question. If Troy ever reached out to you, what would you say to him?
Oh, I'd 100% talk to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'd say, hey, what was happening for you?
I just want to, look, first of all, he won't. But secondly, I would just see how he's going. Like, and I wouldn't press anything. I wouldn't, if he wanted to talk to me as a journalist, that would be great. But if he just wanted to talk to me as a person, that would be great too. As long as he didn't have his powerlifting mates.
Yeah. He shows up on your doorstep with 10 of his mates.
Yeah, that would be scary. But he's incredibly shy, and also he doesn't want to revisit something he did. Like, it's so traumatic. So I'm not expecting a phone call anytime soon. And it's been 7 years since I wrote that story, and he hasn't reached out, and I don't think he's going to. It's not going to be like, Truman Capote and that guy Perry, in Cold Blood, where he goes and hangs out with the killers in jail for extended conversations. It's not going to be like that. It's just...
It's what you wanted, wasn't it?
That's what I wanted. I wanted that. But no, it did not happen. And that's absolutely his right. And, as I say, I hope he's enjoying his anonymous world of being him, because that's where he needs that, Yeah.
Well, Mel, thank you so much. This has been enthralling.
No worries. Thanks, Julian, for having me.
Today's episode was produced by Rachel Tuffery. It was mixed by Jimmy Saunders, who also did our theme music. Daniela Cantu and Chloe Stelling are our interns. Our cover art is by Naomi Lee Beveridge, and this whole thing has been a Super Real production.
To get people excited about Boost Mobile's new nationwide 5G network, we're offering unlimited talk, text, and data for $25 a month.
Forever.
Even if you have a baby.
Even if your baby has a baby.
Even if you grow old and wrinkly and you start repeating yourself.
Even if you start repeating yourself.
Even if you're on your deathbed and you need to make one last call.
Or text.
Right, or text. The long-lost son you abandoned at birth.
You'll still get unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month with Boost Mobile.
Forever!
After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.
Forever.
Hi, I'm Raj Punjabi from HuffPost.
And I'm Noah Michelson, also from HuffPost.
And we're the hosts of Am I Doing It Wrong? A new podcast that explores the all-too-human anxieties we have about trying to get our lives right.
Each week on the podcast, Raj and I pick a new topic that we want to understand better and bring a guest expert on to talk us through how to get it right.
And we're talking like legit, credible experts. Doctors, PhDs, all-around superheroes.
From HuffPost and Acast Studios, check out Am I Doing It Wrong? Wherever you get your podcasts.